Well, we're really happy. Thank you for having us. We're happy that the Belfast City Council and the Broadband Committee in Belfast has really been working on something that I think is a little bit different in that, first, we definitely want a municipally owned fiber to the premise system, but we also want it to provide be provided through multiple ISPs. We want not to have a monopoly situation. We want it to be open, and therefore we're hoping to do something that we've sort of been recommended not to do, but and that is to have what is called a software approach to the connectivity to the network, so that in our central office we have the hardware, and that each ISP then comes in and can have a certain part of Belfast, or depending on what they want and what the city wants. We have been in the process for a number of years. The original Broadband Committee was started by a past city councilor who was tech savvy. I was then a city councilor for 4 years. I'm now just a Broadband Committee member. We have an enthusiastic Broadband Committee that has worked with Axiom on a Connect Me program that helped us reach out to the community for surveys, and we are now in the stage of putting together a complete RFP to send out to network engineering firms. That's our big thing, and then the next thing is to confirm all appropriate funding for that design phase, and then continue marketing, further development of a marketing plan for fundraising and getting the signups for the network. So we'll be looking for partners to make sure that we get the RFP together for the design engineering services, and then to continue our work to reach out to ISPs that might want to get involved. Thank you.
Nailed it. Wow, fantastic. Perfect timing. Carlos, please.
Carlos Barrinuevo. We've been working as I'm on a broadband committee that's been working with the towns of, my town of Georgetown, Arousik, and the towns of Southport, all mid-coast communities. We've been working for several years on a project to bring broadband connectivity to our island communities. We've gone through almost all the steps we've talked about the last 2 days, so I don't want to recap all those steps. Where we are in the project now is we have a defined project. It's really about finding a funding model that works for our communities, that we can engage the political will to actually make happen. So what we're focused now is on a drive toward funding. I think we got a little distracted with the USDA Reconnect loan over the summer, which we engaged in. We saw that as a path to funding. And we're working now on looking at other things. I think what we really need from folks is we need creativity. It really comes down to having creative models to pull together the different strands for a project that, frankly, it's a broadband project. It's relatively well-defined. We know what the cost is. So we're looking for creativity from our ISPs. We're looking for creativity from some of the other bodies that are here. We're looking for clarity from the ISPs and other folks in the room. We have been pursuing a municipally owned broadband project for most of our time period. But we are again looking at our goal of building out a network. So that's basically what we're looking for, creativity and clear goals for funding. Thank you.
I think you nailed it. Excellent. Next up, Desiree.
Hey, my name is Desiree Scorsha. I'm from Boothbay, and Daryl's with me from Boothbay Harbor. We're working together. We're really new in this process. We're really early on. The two towns got a Maine Community Foundation planning grant just in like March or April. So we've only just started to get together. We don't have a single committee yet that the two towns are working on, but we're sort of getting there. So where we are is we're trying to figure out what we need and what we want. You know, my perspective, I grew up in Boothbay and I've lived there for the last 10 years, and we used to be really well served. Now speeds are getting faster, and our infrastructure hasn't kept up. So we don't have a lot of momentum from the public to move this forward. And so we need to be getting to the place where we have a concrete idea of what we want. It's been great for us to see how many things are in common in spite of all the different approaches. You know, everyone has the funding question. Everyone has a certain amount they have to lay out. And it's been really great to see that as different as those options are, there are a lot of things that are similar in the processes.
So as someone who shows up to a lot of the town meetings, I decided I would join the Broadband Committee because I own an IT business in town and it seemed proper. My concern is that this beard's going to be completely white before we figure out what we're going to do. So it scared me yesterday to sit in the room with all of the people I sat with and found out that their committees are 5, 6, 7 years old. And they're the people that have joined it 2 or 3 years ago because the first round gave up. So we're looking still now to find out in our communities if our communities want to work together. I chatted with some people yesterday that have created large groups and are working together by county or by some other type of design. And I've also seen some that have been successful that did it out on their own. I think that those that are doing it maybe on their own are getting there a little bit faster. And we're wondering if that's the path we're going to end up having to take, because even though we live in towns that are right next door to each other, we have very different mindsets from one town body to the other town body. So I'm overwhelmed at how much information I got coming up to this meeting yesterday and came back today for it, because I didn't know quite what I was signing up for, but you guys have enlightened me quite a bit, so I appreciate that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Zuckerman. I'm a business owner and a former resident of the town of Oakland. I'm sitting on the Oakland Broadband Committee. We just formed in the beginning of January. We've held about 4 meetings. Oakland is not as rural a town as many might think. We're bordered by Waterville and Augusta to the south, so we actually have fairly decent broadband. We have 2 providers in town, so I think for our struggle is, are those providers providing the service level that people want in town? So we're in the middle of a survey that we're looking for Oakland residents and businesses. If any of you are in the room today, please fill out this online survey. See me afterwards. I'll give you the link to it, because we want to get some feedback from the town to see if forming a municipal network makes sense for us or not. We've investigated a couple different models, but we haven't really made any decisions yet, so we're still pretty early on in the stages. We've met with a couple of internet service providers just to get some real basic ideas from them on what they've done with their projects. So, our struggle, I think, is just a little bit different, is that we do have internet options already available to us. Just are they the best options for those residents? We also, the town already owns a little bit of municipal-owned fiber optic cable within the town that connects some of the municipal buildings, which not a lot of other towns have. So we may use that as a method to start expanding or building a network. So we already seem to have a backbone in place. So that's an interesting piece to what we have available to us already. So just trying to figure out if there's a good model for us and whether residents and businesses in town would like to use it. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Larry Bell. I'm from the town of Litchfield. I'm part of the Broadband Committee for our town. I'm here with David Blocher to my right, also representing the town. We have just formed really a couple months ago, so we're really early in our journey here, which made this conference a great event for us to try and figure out what we don't know already. In our town, and we're if you don't know where Litchfield is, we're sort of halfway between Lewiston and Augusta. We're a town of about 3,200 residents, some year-round, but we've got a series of small ponds and lakes, so we've got the summer resident population as well. So we're really underserved in our town. We have some people that have spectrum coverage, so decent speed, expensive, and uneven quality. We have others that have the consolidated DSL not as fast, still fairly expensive, and not great quality. And then we have some of us that have no really internet capability unless maybe we go to a satellite option, which is expensive and uneven, et cetera. So really underserved in just about all parts of our community. We are currently sending out a survey to our residents through our monthly town newsletter to try and figure out where everyone feels we are in this journey. We know we need to do better mapping of our road systems to understand what's out there. We've got a combination of public and private roads that we believe really don't represent the true scenario. And I think the other thing I'd like to mention is our goal is to make sure everyone's connected. You can see that the large companies will go to the large towns. We're in between that. We're really in that no man's land between Lewiston and Augusta. And we really feel that to stay and survive as a small town and grow and prosper in the future, we need this. David, any other comments?
No, we really appreciate this conference. It's opened our eyes to a number of things, and so we're glad for everybody else sharing what you have. Get us on track and maybe save a little time, not go down too many dead ends. So thank you.
Awesome. Let's give these folks a round of applause. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, wonderful. So now if I could call the ISPs and the third-party providers up as well.
Okay. Hey, my name's Mark. I'm with Axiom Technologies. I'm going to do this in 2 minutes, and so I'm reading because I'm obnoxious and I talk a lot. Based in Machias, our mission at Axiom is to serve rural communities. It's been our mission for 14 years, and we continue to do that work. For us, we envision a future that, just like electricity, every home in Maine has world-class broadband. Simple as that. We're hyper-focused on equal access to all. We're not particularly excited about the current state of affairs where somebody in your community, depending on where they geographically live, may get a different type of signal and a different cost than somebody else in your community. We like serving communities where everybody has the same access and has the same connectivity to world-class access. We've kind of done quite a bit on islands. So for you island communities, I've talked a little bit about this. We're on Cranberry Isles, where we have 180 customers currently and growing. We're on Cliff Island, we just built out. We have 80 customers there. We're on Chebeague Island, where we have a DSL services is not particularly good, which we're now trying to convert to fiber. We're working on that, and we're in cahoots with a couple of bridged islands, which is kind of cheating, right? Can you really call them islands if they're bridged? But anyway, we're in cahoots with them. There are two, making friends. Okay, two things. One is, I thought I'd bring props. One is this.
Tom Brady. It's a
Tom
picture
Brady.
of Tom Brady.
No, he's not a famous quarterback with a famous wife. This is what you call a champion. And Alan talked about it a little bit, but not just any champion. This is a champion that people listen to. When he speaks in the locker room, people listen to him. You need a community member that people will listen to that's well respected. Many of you in this room are here because you have crappy connectivity at your home, and that's what got you motivated. But you may need to expand that group and find another champion to help you move a project forward in your state, in your town. The second, wrap it up, she says. The second is the eternal question. Why? You have to answer this question. Why are you doing this? And by the way, just so everybody's aware, I have stinky broadband is not a goal, just so you know. It is not a goal.
Excellent, thank you. Next up is Karim. Also, for your ISP friends, questions on yellow cards. Yellow cards for ISP friends.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Nothing like flashing Tom Brady. Yes, I did. Hang on, I think I got a poster of Bill Belichick. Look, GWI wants to wire up all of Maine. We don't want to leave anybody behind. Low income, middle income, high income, every demographic possible, we want to wire up Maine because it's the 21st century and we believe it's our financial, ethical, moral obligation to wire up everybody in Maine. End of discussion. We believe, and we're all in on fiber. Doesn't mean it's the end-all and be-all solution for everything and everybody, but we are in on fiber. We believe broadband should be defined as a gigabit by gigabit so that we don't have to have the same discussion in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. So that's us. In terms of what we believe we need from communities, we need you to believe, and we need you to tell us that you're all in, because we're all in. We need you to tell us that you are willing to work tirelessly and effortlessly, like us, to get this done, because we can't do it alone. We also believe that what we need from you is focus. Time is of the most valuable commodity that is available to us today. So what is your focus? If you want to have a multiplicity of conversations, we're all in. But let those conversations have a very singular context, that you want connectivity. If you would like any one of us to participate in those conversations, we're available. But we'll only go where we're wanted. We cannot change the socioeconomic conversation in your communities. We will work hard to earn your trust and verification, to be your partner, to do whatever it takes. But you have to want us. We cannot carry that ball alone by ourselves, no matter if you're Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. So.
Excellent. We're heading to Alan.
LCI Fiber, as I mentioned, we're part of a family of companies. We have Lincolnville Telephone Company, which covers that whole Lincolnville area, and we have Tidewater Telecom, which is the Damariscotta down to Pemaquid area, Bristol, Bremen. All my peeps are in the room here. So we're in 3 counties. Okay, we have a network. We actually own a lot of fiber. We have a big network all the way from Bangor to Freeport. 3 counties in particular: Waldo, Knox, and Lincoln. Okay, I know I got a lot of those folks in the room. So we have 2 things. And I talk about what we want from communities. Well, there are 2 different kinds of communities. Some of them are in our incumbent area, our ILEC communities. It's different what we want from them than we want from our CLEC communities. Some of it's the same. And the main thing we need from both of them, though, is, I think, one, to tell us what you want and need. Our commitment, we just started a Smart Connected Communities project in all of our areas, all of our footprint, but in our ILECs, within the next 3 to 5 years, we will have fiber to the prim 100% in every town in our 2 ILECs. 100%, that's our commitment to that community. What we need as a commitment for them is help us with the other part. As I mentioned, we're a small company. You're looking at the sales force. Help us do about take rate. Help us look what get to outreach with your community. Help us make that sale, make that commitment. That is so important for us to be able to do that, because somebody's going to be first year, somebody's going to be 5th year. So we need to help us understand how to do that, what your needs are. The other thing in terms of needs is help us understand we're running a business and we're here to make money. We're a profit model, okay? So we may not see the same things that that you see all the time in your community. Help us see that. It was at the Bremen Broadband Committee meeting. We did a presentation not too long ago there. I'm in Broadband Committee meetings every night of the week almost. But anyhow, we were there just not too long ago, and they were talking, and I was saying, man, we got this great deal. We're going to build out 100% fiber to every home in Bremen. It's great. And we said, all I need is a 50% take rate at $49.95. And somebody said, some of our people can't afford $49.95. And I'm going, well, that's a great price. What are you talking about? You know, and so that's the thing I need to look at. They told us we have low income needs. We have families that don't need that can't afford that. How can we do that? I went back, told our family owners who own the business, and they said, oh, well, how about subsidized low income for those towns? How about free for some of those folks? We're committed to building new customers too. So help us understand what the need is. We'll make it. We're a business. When we build new customers, we get profit and we stay in business. So help us do that, and we work together symbiotically.
Hi again. I'm taking this on the assumption that the municipality or the community group of municipalities has decided that they want fiber, period. You want fiber to the prem. What we need from you as part of a planning process or even as part of a construction process is essentially access, and it's access to granular street data, because we use that in helping us determine what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Access to locations that we can meet with your citizenry and educate them. Access to a location where we can conduct digital literacy classes once the network is built or while the network is being built, to help people understand what it is that's coming. And collaboration and communication, which I mentioned earlier. You know, we can come in and we can let your people know what's going on, we can educate them, but we can't do any of it if we don't know how to reach them, particularly if it's not in one of our footprints. So we've had tax databases, we've had voter registration lists, we've had the town put stuff up on a website with contact information so that people can reach back out to us. And so a lot of it is an in-kind collaboration. You know, in the case of Argyle, where we're doing planning right now, Argyle is an unorganized territory north of Alton, so you sort of know where it is because so many of you know where Alton is. There isn't a place in town for assemblage. So when we do public meetings up there, we go to the Alton Elementary School, and if we were to have a meeting that was oversized for the elementary school, we would be looking to John to use the municipal building in Alton because Argyle doesn't have anything. So it's really just communication, collaboration, and access. That's boils it down for us.
Excellent.
Who's next?
Great. Stacy, you're up next.
So I'm Stacy Thompson, and I'm proud to be here representing Premium Choice Broadband. I came, like Mark, with like 2 pages to talk about, and that's going to take a lot more than 2 minutes. So we're going to throw that out the window, and I'm going to wing it. We are a locally owned and operated ISP. We are proud to be the provider of choice for over 5,000 families in Maine. We started in 2007. With a wireless footprint, and we were giving people 1.5 down, and we were heroes. Woot, woot. Well, times they are changing. And so we've changed the focus of the company, and we now operate a fiber to the premise network, starting in Dover Foxcroft and going all the way to Greenville Junction. We're putting all of that in place now. So all the way from Dover to Greenville Junction, you can imagine all the smaller communities that we go by. And I'm getting phone calls. What about us? What about us? What about us? And I love to get those phone calls, but they don't always make sense from a financial standpoint. So I'm going to ask, as the community, keep calling me, but if you would also, when you make that phone call, make a phone call to your legislator and let them know how important it is to you to have high-speed, quality internet to the premise. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we are going to, excellent job for the ISPs. Round of applause for the ISPs. Please be sure to write your questions on the yellow cards, hand them to the gentleman walking around collecting cards. We are going to get 3 more quick rapid fire rounds from third-party providers. Technical assistance providers. Before we do that, and it's going to go Kendra, John, Brian. Kendra, Joe, pardon me. And before we do that, we do have some bubbling questions. Oh, excellent timing, Nick. No, great. One of the first questions for the ISP, since they're already on stage, we will ask the blue cards for community members. There are floating mics for you to be able to respond to when we ask those. So one question for the ISPs already is, given your remarks, Stacy, how important is the state bond for broadband expansion?
It's incredibly important. We proposed last year LD 1163 that would allow internet service providers to apply for a tax credit per subscriber actually hooked up. It was held over, so we didn't get a decision on that. But that would be huge for a company like us that's invested over $2 million in private funds in rural Maine to be able to continue to expand in those areas. It would be absolutely huge. So again, call your legislator.
Ditto to the broadband funding bond for the Connect Me Authority, whether it's $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, it'll never be enough. And it helps communities like yours and entities like us, because as we keep saying, we are a business and we have to have a business model, and broadband doesn't come inexpensively. So if whatever the Connect Me Authority gets or has can be quadrupled, essentially, if they commit to a 25% match to what we as providers and you as communities can do, and we'll get a lot further, a lot faster that way. And I just hope that it does come back up, and I hope that this event, you all take this information home and let your people know how important this is, so we can let all of our legislators know how important it is.
What's the third ditto? Yeah, ditto. Yeah, all of that. Yeah, it's so important. First of all, here's my pitch is last year, before I start every meeting with the community, I would say, call your legislator, support the broadband bond. We were a little deflated there after that. I'm going to start saying that again, hopefully. But also letting them know that that's really important. And that Connect Maine, I believe, I don't can speak for everybody here, but I think it's one of the most successful public-private kind of partnership things that government has done. And I've been in government stuff for a long time. It really works. And it's only a tiny pot of money. And it works. I'm going in front of another 400 unserved people this year with that tiny pot of money. Think about it if we could actually expand that, and that's important. That's always what we try to tell when we go. We've met with a lot of legislators. We get up there and do that, and that's what we tell them. It works. How do we make it bigger, better? Because there's clearly need, and that's huge.
One additional question that's for ISPs to be thinking about, and also for the technical assistance providers to consider. We're hearing a lot about, obviously, the community demand drives policy. Policy drives a good amount of public funding. We talk about the role of community champions. What's the role? How do you cultivate? One of the questions for communities: how do you cultivate the community champions?
You can't. I think they have to be there already. You have to find them. You pretty much everybody knows who the 10 people in town are that move things along, especially in small communities. So those are the people you go to first. And they're essentially, if you can get their buy-in, then you can get everybody else to move along, mostly. That's our approach anyway.
I was just going to say that the key thing also in a community champion is how are they with influencing their neighbors. That's right. It takes effort, it takes conversation, it takes intent. So it's not just enough that you are the flag bearer and you're just running ahead and you expect people just to follow you because you are the flag bearer. You have to be able to converse. You have to be able to connect, and frankly, you also have to be able to understand and translate the multiplicity of stakeholders in a very concentrated enough fashion to say, okay, now I got everybody in together with all of us. So I would not discount the amount of calibration that's required to be an influencer. Otherwise, it will not be able to leverage where we would like to see that.
I think one of the things as providers, and we all do this on a regular basis, whether we're lobbying to legislators to help make the path to statewide broadband smoother, or whether we're working with communities or as salespeople out selling, we have a lot of experience in how to lead the charge. So I know in my case, or in Otoko's case, when that person from the community comes up and says, I'm going to lead the charge, we can certainly coach. We can talk about who the legislators are you need to talk to, how to help organize your broadband committee, how to help organize your town, and be your partner in that. But we can't walk into the room and go, okay, yep, you're the one. That has to rise to the top. Like Mark said, you have to rise to the top by yourself. Yes? No.
Great. Thank you.
Real quick, let me just want to add one thing to that. When you're in those champions, just real quick, is that the other thing we need to, I go to a lot of broadband meetings, a lot of select board meetings, et cetera. I don't understand the politics of your town. You do. Help us with that, because I've stepped on a lot of landmines, and the right champions can help us avoid that too. Yeah, hard to believe.
So one of the great things about this session so far is the ping-ponging of heads back and forth. So in doing so, we also we did have Pioneer queued up as a respondent for this. I believe there's a microphone, and they're ready to go from the back of the room. Welcome. 2 minutes to talk about what you need from communities.
Sure. My name is Tim McAfee. I'm from Pioneer Broadband, CEO and engineer. A few things that we need from communities is that unparalleled passion and support for what it is that you feel you want for a broadband program in your community. A lot of people will come to us and say, what do you think we should have? And we don't know what you want, but we can do just about anything that you need to have done. The other thing that we require is for you to come to the table ready to look for your own funding source, because that's not what we do. We build networks and we'll operate networks and we'll provide service on networks, but we're not going to be able to find your funding source for you. That's not our line of work. But we are looking for partners to run our services on municipal networks. We don't mind if the network's owned by the municipality. We actually prefer it, because if you want to build me a network and spend the capital to do that, that's awesome for us. It really is, because that's the biggest hurdle that we have as a small company, to get out there and spend that capital in multiple locations before we can start providing our service. It's really hard, as you know, in rural Maine especially, to do that. So we look to partner with whoever wants to show us their passion and find some money and let us do what we do best. Thank you. We've been working in Baileyville and Calais recently with the new Down East Broadband Open Access Network.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. So now if you look under your table, taped to the bottom of the table, you'll... No, I'm just kidding. Some of you were looking. Good for you. Good for you. So an interesting, a critical component of the broadband ecosystem is the role of technical assistance providers. To that extent, we've asked 3 to provide 2 remarks as to what they need from ISPs in making the connection, what they need from communities in really fusing it. We'll start with Kendra Jo and the Island Institute.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'm Kendra Jo Grindle. I am a community development officer from the Island Institute. I also am the project lead for our broadband team, who has incredibly put on this event in partnership with our co-hosts and Maine Broadband Coalition. And so for the Island Institute, we aren't really here to make your community do anything. We hear you, and we want to support you, and we want to help build capacity within your communities, and that's through your working groups. And everything that we worked on yesterday. And so that's why we're here. We really hear communities and their calls and their needs. And so we know that we can't do it without community members. And so that leads me to my first point, is for the community members. You're in this room for a reason. You're working so hard, but your community isn't seeing you be here. We see you be here. So be transparent through your entire process. It gets you political will, it gets you community buy-in, it really helps those hurdles. Yesterday we talked so much about funding. It's such a big hurdle. But if you're bringing your community along, if you're bringing your selectmen along, if you're bringing your town managers along, those champions that you identify, they're really going to be there through your process, and that financial hurdle might not be as hard. And you heard that yesterday from Roger Heinen on Islesboro. You'll hear it from other communities as well, as they kind of tackle that really large sum that helps broadband happen and build infrastructure. It's scary, but it's scarier when they have no idea what's going on, because it does take process, so be patient. And for ISPs, you have ones up here and they're listening. Just keep listening. Answer the calls, respond to the emails, come to the communities. I hear from so many communities, and some ISPs aren't in this room to hear this, but that's the frustrating part. When you work so hard, these people are giving up hours of their time, evenings, weekends, days, to be here to work, and the ISPs don't listen and they don't show up. So just respond, be there, hear them out, and help them.
Excellent. Thanks. Next up, John. And in case you didn't take note, the questions for the technical assistance providers would be pink cards. Pink cards for the QA.
I'm John Doherty, General Manager and Vice President for Mission Broadband. We are broadband consultants. Our team has been in the industry for combined, probably over 150 years. So we got a lot of experience in a variety of areas. But from a broadband consulting perspective, what we do is work with towns from the beginning, which is a lot of data gathering. Heard a lot about feasibility. So we really gathered data for a couple of months, I'd say. All the different stakeholders, to include public forums, because those are fun. And then you bring that together to a vision. So now the town has a vision. We bring that vision to a very comprehensive RFP process so that we can carry through that process. So in the end, we work with service providers and say, okay, what's the negotiated price? What's the negotiated design? So now we have a vision, we have a design, we have a price that goes along with it. We'll work with you through we can help try to identify government grants, give the technical side of the government grant, how that will work with you through the financial model side of it. So now we have a vision and we have the design and the pricing, help financial model, and then in the end we'll carry you through all the way through project management, right? So we'll carry it all the way through. So my questions, my I'd say input to the town is, when you're ready to start this journey, and it is a journey, it will take time, is to put a statement that everybody can see that says broadband will happen. And just believe in it and believe in yourselves, because we'll help you through that journey. And for the ISPs, all the vendors, no matter if it's an ISP or technical vendor, be transparent and be creative, right? That's really what we're after. And the folks you see in this room, that's what they do. But there's more out there. We just need to be transparent and creative.
Brian.
Hi, Brian Lippold with Casco Bay Advisors. We're an independent telecom consultant that focuses on assisting towns, counties, state government with solving broadband challenges. We're not a service provider. We don't build networks. We don't operate networks, but we have relationships with all of the providers, and we work closely with all the providers. We focus a large part of our attention on understanding what you have in your community in terms of existing assets, where those gaps are, and what are the various solutions that may be available to fill those gaps or to bring a solution. We don't predefine the outcome. We let the process define that outcome. So some of the projects that we've worked on in the past and current projects, we did a county-wide study for Franklin County, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few seconds. We just completed a playbook for Cumberland County. We were the owner's project manager for Islesboro. We're in the process of engineering a network on Swans Island, just completed engineering a private network in Bar Harbor. And we're working with 11 other towns right now to working together to come up with solutions for their communities. What do we need from the ISPs? Active and timely engagement. The location and capability of your network. Don't make us go out and drive every road to understand what's out there, but we need that information. And what are the costs to upgrade? And to let us know that in a timely basis. From communities, we need strong, diverse, well-organized broadband committees, which you've heard about for all day. We need you to have skin in the game. That is really a game changer. And don't predefine a solution. Every town is different. Every community has a different solution. Let the process work. In Franklin County, we did a county-wide study. We have one provider now offering to build out 6 towns on their dime as a result of that study, and a portion of another 6 towns. And we have another provider from away willing to come in and build out 100% of 17 towns. There is some funds that would be required from those towns, but the process can work in very, very rural areas, and it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Round of applause again for everyone. This is a hard thing to do, to pack as much into a 2-minute spiel, so definitely credit to everyone who's done so. I've got a handful of questions here we're going to cycle through. We're going to throw a couple to the community participants, so have those mics ready. But while we do so, for the ISPs, a question from the audience: how do you prioritize the communities that want to work with you? What ways can communities become a higher priority?
So GWI services all 16 counties in Maine. And we believe in open access. We're maniacal about net neutrality and maniacal about data privacy. So what matters to us, if you want to get on top of our priority list, and frankly our priority list is long, is do you actually believe in those things? And do you have all those elements that have been talked about in this conference organized? If you are, and you believe in those things, then we will engage in some very long and serious conversations with you. But at the same time, we're patient. So if you're not there, we'll be patient. We'll be there for you when you want to pick up the phone and do want to talk to us. But that's how we drive our decision metric.
I think one of the key things, and it was for us in the last Connect Maine grant round, we got a grant for the town of Cambridge. And they definitely moved up my priority list because just meeting with them and their broadband committee, the level of passion and commitment and the stories from the people in the community about access to telemedicine, about trying to run a small business in rural Maine, definitely that passion moved them up the list. And we're out there getting licensed on poles right now, and we're going to be serving the entire community.
I kind of have to tap on to what Stacy said. There needs to be a cohesive, we're ready. We may not know what the outcome's going to be. We may not know whether we want fiber or we want fiber to the node or some other technology, but we're ready to move forward. And particularly in the case of outside of our footprints, where it's cost prohibitive for us to make a business model to come in and take the whole burden. As Pioneer said, some skin in the game, know where your money's coming from, or at least a good portion of it. But just readiness to move forward and cohesiveness and passion.
Yeah, ditto again on that. Just real quick, the thing that we add to that too, because we own a pretty and manage a pretty extensive network, fiber optic network. The funding, if it's outside of our footprint, also the funding, the commitment from the town, the broadband commitment, all that kind of stuff. But also, we look at it from an engineering point of view as well. So the Bodenham project, the reason that was really a stretch for us. And there was a ton of conversation inside between our engineers and our owners and everybody, the accountants, saying, wait a minute, should we do that? But it was the engineering piece that made it work. We were looking at the long-term development of our fiber network throughout the state. So sometimes that helps prioritize. Our friends in Litchfield called me a couple weeks ago. We're not quite there yet, but that's the point. As soon as we get there, that makes a change in how we make that prioritization.
Great. So for the communities, a broad question for you to respond to, and one for Booth Bay and Booth Bay Harbor. I'll cue you up first and then ask the broader question. So for Booth Bay, a member of the audience asked, are there resources, support, et cetera, that would potentially help towns jointly set goals and vision to realize the benefits of regionalization, and what partners, nonprofits, state, et cetera, have been trusted in helping with other regional efforts? So that's something for Booth Bay to queue up a response to. And then for other communities, this is a little bit of a broader but important one. We talk a lot about who. How are your community committees created? What's the makeup of them, and how do they come to the table? So for those communities that presented, welcome a quick response to how are your community committees created? And we've got some floating mics available for quick responses.
Oh, hey. So we were just conferring for a second. I know from my perspective, early on in this process, what would be helpful is more data, is a couple of examples of towns like ours, and what have they done? What did it cost? What are people paying? What are their speeds? There's a lot of talk of transparency, but I think the financial end of the transparency is lacking. And so I would like a heck of a lot more information about the per person costs and the per person data levels. And I think there's a second part to the question that I forgot.
Yeah, how is your committee created?
in Litchfield, some people who, well, particularly Larry, who can't get service at all, and other underserved people went to the selectmen, and the selectmen ended up appointing a group. Again, we're right at the early stages, and right now we're doing a survey to really find out how much need and how much interest do we really have the town behind us, and I think that's going to be the critical step, and I hear it today. The other side, I want to bring back the question that went to the ISPs, I believe. I mean, I've been involved in town politics and state government for some time, and it seems to me this is something that really screams for regional solutions or even statewide solutions. You know, what we're saying is every town's got to do it on their own. And, it seems to me that I've challenged us all to think about how we can leverage that a little higher.
Thank you. How we formed the committee, and the answer we have is we don't really have our committee formed yet, so we don't have a good process for forming a committee. Sorry, we can't be more helpful.
So what happened was we were asked to form a committee by our co-town, which is a town that Desiree is from, sorry. And so we created our own committee in Booth Bay Harbor. Booth Bay is creating their own committee. We're going to join those two committees together. But what we've found, especially after being here, is that we don't really have a fully formed committee. I think they're very important community members that we need to add to our committee. I think adding somebody from the health field, whether it be a doctor or just any health professional, to both speak to their needs and also be able to speak to the heartstrings of our aging population and let them know that that both ends of the spectrum need this. So we're looking to add. We already have some library folks on here. I think we need to add somebody from our school. And I think so. We need the student end of things. I think we need the senior end of things. I think the rest of us are already here for internet. We know what we need it for, and we don't need to be told. So I think our committee needs to have those people added to it.
As a partial follow-up to that, wondering if any of the Three Bridged Islands or the folks involved in the Lincoln County work would want to talk about regionalization, maybe some of the folks involved in Western Maine. I know that we haven't touched a lot on it, so I just wanted to put that out there too.
Nick, as that microphone gets handed off, perhaps back to John in Belfast to respond. You were about to respond to your committee.
In Belfast, we do have a good system for having a number of committees. We have probably 10 or 12 committees in the cities, things like Parks and Rec. We have a climate crisis committee. We have a cemetery committee. We also have our broadband committee. And we typically have a staff person, in our case, the economic development officer, who has been very key to its upkeep over the years. And it was started by, as I mentioned before, a city councilor who had a lot of interest in this. And there's always been a city council member on the committee, and other members of the committee have come in by interest and word of mouth. Yes, we could definitely benefit by increasing that, but the city council has to interview and approve each member of the committee. But overall, it's been a good system, but we need more members.
Yep, go ahead, Carlos.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So I was asked to talk a little bit about regionalization. And actually, it's been an interesting topic, I think, this conference is, at what point do you need to pull together mass to be able to make a project work? Because it's, as those guys will tell you, when a project's 100 homes, it's very hard. In our case, if you look at the geography, Georgetown and Arousik are essentially, you have to go through Arousik to get to Georgetown. So any broadband connection is going to go through those islands. And so from very early on, the Arousik and Georgetown people understood that and have been working together. That does, however, create more more costs. I mean, coordination costs, because you're talking about two different governments. And at some point, we embraced, with Island Institute's help, we also embraced working with Southport, who is not geographically connected to us, but is extremely similar in everything else in terms of an island community and all their goals as well. So is it It is more difficult, but it does create the mass that will make the project economics work a little better. And honestly, in Georgetown and Rouse's case, I mean, it is sort of inefficient to build one and not build the other. So it's something to look at. I know Boothbay is addressing this. There's a lot of, there's the idea of county creations or adjacent communities. I do think it's important to look at that and understand how that may be complex, but also how it may ultimately be beneficial, and it may be beneficial when you're talking to different providers or construction and trying to create an efficient way to construct companies. So that's my take on that.
Excellent. Another regional perspective.
Okay, I'm Mary Ellen Barnes with Lincoln County Regional Planning, and so we do economic development, land use, transportation planning, so we recognized early on that broadband was pretty important. So I will just try to be brief. I don't think I have the end game in view yet, but a couple of years ago we got a Connect Me planning grant, so we're working with our most northern western towns, mostly underserved, unserved, and I think that's the place where we needed to start. Since then, we've also supported Boothbay Harbor's project down there, and also Southport's participation as well in Monhegan's efforts. So I think, well, we do not, I will say that with the 7 towns participating in our process, I think it's been fantastic. People are learning from each other. We're having at least 3 or 4 people per town coming, and that was unusual. I will not mention the name of a town, but one town has gone from 0 to 60 really fast, and that's been great, and I think it's helped because they didn't want to be left behind. They're one of the non-coastal towns, and so we're really pleased with that. I'm not sure where it's all going to go. We're trying to maintain the separate parallel thinking about municipal or regional utility. We haven't quite figured that out yet, but it's something we're keeping in mind. And if I wouldn't mind, if Chris wants to add to the story here in Lincoln County and Somerville.
I'd like to add just a little different way of looking at this whole question of should the municipality own it or not, should it be regional or not, and remind folks that we didn't get to where we are today by only having public roads if they were built by each town on their own, and otherwise the whole state and within every community being a private toll road. We considered it a public necessity to get from here to there, and in the digital world, the digital rights of way are also really important to protecting the rights and the needs and the economic opportunities of communities. And we have to start thinking about it in that way. So we don't yet know whether we're going to succeed in getting other towns to join us in doing something regionally. But in my town of Somerville, we realized that to get from the north end of Somerville to the south end of Somerville, we have to travel roads through one of our adjacent communities. That's the reality of our strange geography. And we want to participate with those communities in sharing in the costs and the advantages for them of solving this problem with us.
Excellent. So one of the questions from the audience that I think is suitable for anyone on stage to respond to, what is the waiting time to build a network once financing is in place? And relatedly, are there workforce constraints?
At least a year, yes.
Your make-ready process is going to take 6 to 9 months just to get the utility poles ready for your attachment. And then you're looking at another 6, 12, 18 months before you have the network constructed and all of your subscribers attached.
Yes, but with the caveat, we also have an ILEC, we have telephone company areas that so the make-ready in those, that is different. So it is different. It is a year at least, maybe more, outside of your footprint in our case. But within that, we're talking, as I mentioned, we're doing that in Bremen and Bristol and all the folks out here that are in our ILEC. We just met with Bremen. If we can move that process forward, we just had the conversation. We plan to be doing fiber install in the spring and doing installations in the summer. So it's 6 to 9 months, but it's because it's in our area already. So it depends.
Ditto what he said, and we're experiencing that in Alton because 90% of the town is within our footprint, and about 2 miles of road falls within the town line but outside of our footprint, and we have to deal with Make Ready, with CMP and Consolidated, and that portion of the project is probably 3 or 4 weeks behind even though we knew well in advance that we were going after make-ready issues before we even had all the money in place, and we're still behind. And the other thing is, New York State passed this awesome funding bond, so it's really hard to get contracted cable people because they're all working in New York State. So maybe we could do the same thing, and then they'll come here.
Great.
Ditto.
One thing that I would recommend is there's something known as One Touch Make Ready. Not to complicate things, but it allows ISPs to be able to go on a pole with certified crew to be able to attach to those poles. It would be a tectonic shift in getting things done. Make Ready constitutes about 1/3 of the cost, if not about 1/3 to half the time burden that the ISP carries. And it's been voted in Vermont. The FCC has actually said this is something that makes sense. Please do read up on it. If you like what it is about, you should talk to your legislators about it so that they can then try to get empowered to be able to talk to the PUC about it. Because that is one big societal lever that will help in the speed and the efficiency of the construction, especially in the rural areas that we really, really, really care about. Because that is the hurdle that essentially is the inertial brake on progress from a speed and a cost efficiency point of view. So One Touch Make Ready, do read about it.
Yep. Could feel the questions starting to bubble on that.
The one thing no one mentioned, this is Maine, and the weather is unpredictable. And as we've seen in some of our communities that are really going through the process of implementing this infrastructure, frozen ground, snowstorms, immense rain, those things cause delay. So, and ISPs are pretty transparent about that through the process, but be open to that and talk to your communities about the fact that those can cause delays throughout this process as well, past the make ready, past everything that they can estimate and kind of deal with. We can't deal with Mother Nature.
Excellent. John, I saw you nodding your head, and we've got a question explicitly for and I think this goes for all of the consultants and third-party providers. Are you willing to work on any or just one phase of planning? And for Mission Broadband in particular, what communities are you working?
Yeah, any. We can knowing that you're already started down the road, we'll pick up anywhere, right? So whether you're at the beginning or you're at the end, or project management, or any way you want to be. Absolutely. So our focus when we started the company, like I said, there's a group of us that got together. We started in April of this year, so we're a young company that way, but we're old when it comes to all the work that we've done. All of us have been part of different telephone companies throughout the state of Maine and in New England, I'll say. So we've built fiber networks in a variety of different ways, just not as under Mission Broadband. So our first company, if you want to look at a very comprehensive RFP, would be Town of New Shoreham in Rhode Island. Was one of the first ones we wrote, so that's a completely owned and operated by the town. Very extensive piece. I'm working, we're under contract with a couple other towns, but because they're not here and I haven't spoken to them, I can't mention that.
Great. Brian, a question, and also feel free, Kendra Jo and Brian, to respond to that one as well. But Brian, as you do so, one question for you was, how was the Franklin County study funded?
So the Franklin County study was funded 50% by the county and the towns within the county. So 22 organized towns each wrote a check for their portion of 50% of the study. The county picked up the unorganized territory, and then the Connect Maine Authority matched that on a 50-50 basis. So when we talk about skin in the game, it actually starts in the planning process. And that's one thing that helps hold those communities together is they each wrote a check and they have skin in the game. And the other question, we assist communities from organizing all the way through to construction management. Again, we don't build networks and we don't operate them, but we leverage our experience doing that in our past lives. So from A to Z.
I'd agree. I mean, we're here to support and provide resource. So we start from the very beginning, as you saw yesterday, with really working through working communities and understanding the community-driven broadband process model. but our work doesn't finish. We have communities that are implementing their infrastructure, and we're still supporting them in various ways. And we support communities throughout the coast and the islands. So we're working with Lincoln County 7, as well as the remainder of Lincoln County to see what that can look like with Mary Ellen. And we are working with all of the island communities and coastal communities from down in the Portland area all the way up through to Eastport and Lubec.
Just add one thing to the planning process. I like all of the people up here, and so I don't want to. Anyway, everybody does a great job, and has their own process. We at Axiom have been thinking about ways to accelerate the process, because it does take a long time, and there's a lot of impatience as you go through the process. And one of those things Karam has mentioned, which is very important, is this make-ready process, which is just insufferable to go through. So, but I think from a planning perspective, we're looking for communities right now who are interested in working through a very fast planning process in which we would provide our services for free to get people to get a town to implementation, and see if we could do that in a short period of time. And I'm talking about maybe 6 months, 4 to 6 months. So if you're interested in that opportunity, we're interested in talking with you. It has to be the right fit. It has to be the right kind of community. But I think that we need to shorten, and people like Mission and people like Brian and Island Institute can really help that process also. So I don't want to take away from the work that they've done or are doing, because it's extremely important, but something to consider.
It's got to be real quick.
Okay.
Nothing is free.
I will say that as an organization, we have never accepted money to plan a project. We just haven't. The other part of speeding it up, depending on who you're working with and who your partner is, a planning grant is going to take you a little bit longer. If you can jump to infrastructure, it's going to go faster. Thank you.
Like all good conversations, there is more to talk about than we have time. But what I will say is that we just heard from 19 humans in 49 minutes around the entire spectrum. So credit to you all for participating. Thank you so much. Thank you to Telco for sponsoring today. And I just want to say that there's something very special that is happening in Maine around this issue. I don't know of many other spaces where you have a combination of consumers and producers that come together to think about how to pursue a heavy lift. And it is happening in a very authentic way in communities around the state. So I think you all have a tremendous amount to be proud of.